Mark, thanks very much for joining us. For those who don't know, just tell us a little bit more about Beaufort Capital.
Beaufort Capital has been around since 2013, and we provide mezz finance to seasoned, experienced property developers, any real estate asset class, anywhere in Great Britain. So England, Scotland, Wales. We do, I would say, the majority of our business in England, which perhaps won't surprise you. We do a fair amount in Scotland and a little bit in Wales. And the fact that we can do financing for any real estate asset class gives us, we think, a USP there. A lot of our competitors like to stick to London and the southeast or in particular segments. But for our part, whether it be student accommodation, care homes, residential, office, you name it, we're more than happy to look at those.
I'm going to pick up the student housing part in a minute, Mark. But just in terms of where you're seeing the financing market at the moment, I guess, what are you seeing, and are there particular sectors that are more demanding of financing at the moment? What are you seeing?
Well, I think it's fair to say, and it won't be a surprise to anybody listening in, that some of the sectors, for example, retail has taken obviously a real hammering. And also there is a question mark now over offices, where in the past, obviously, so many of us are used to going into the office each day. And at the moment, certainly while COVID is around, that remains a question mark for the future. At the same time, there is this feeling that so many of us have been working from home that maybe it's not always the best solution. And we certainly know that being able to bounce ideas off colleagues works extremely well. So ultimately, in the longer term, maybe the office will come back to the fore again. Taking it from the other perspective, well, what's come really up in the last few months and so on, industrial logistics and so on. We've seen a lot with warehousing, that's really come to the fore. And also some of the other class sets like student accommodation, care homes and so on remains, people will still need these. So we see that as a big growth area as well.
And looking at that student accommodation area, Mark, what are you seeing in terms of that? Have you seen something of a pause because of the health crisis, or are you still seeing a lot of activity in the market?
It's interesting because I'd say probably the answer to that is both. There's been a pause from a number of players, and if we think why that might be, particularly the high street banks, they've had so many issues with which to contend. And in particular, trying to come to terms with the CBILS support from the government, trying to process those applications. It's not surprising that they've had to turn their attention away from perhaps looking at new business for different clients, new clients to the banks. Some of the challenger banks have had some issues, some of the alternative financiers. For our part, though, we still see great opportunity. And I've got to say that there's still this wall of capital that needs to find a home somewhere. And if you were looking across the spectrum to where you might wish to invest, student still does remain extremely resilient.
And looking at the healthcare sector, Mark, I mean, that's an interesting one as well. Are you beginning to see more activity in that space?
We are, and it's something that we at Beaufort, we've got a sister company that's very heavily involved in sort of care homes and so on, and going further into health issues and so on. So from our perspective, we see that as again a big growth area. The COVID situation has been appalling for so many nursing homes, and we're not obviously oblivious to that. At the same time, if I look at what our skill set is, it's all about development finance. So what we're looking to do is to provide finance to people who genuinely know what they're doing, can build something on time, on budget, and then either will sell it or refinance it. And at that stage, Beaufort's sort of involvement ceases. At the same time, we don't go into it just thinking we'll lend the money, we'll get out within 12, 18 months. We obviously want to know that the proposal is for it to be well run, well managed and so on. So we take an interest in that, because ultimately that will help get the refinance away or get the sale away at the end. But our involvement is very much that initial construction period, and that's where the main experience of Beaufort sits.
I think there's going to be a lot more of a focus on that healthcare side as well, particularly in terms of purpose built, and a change across Europe for that. Thanks very much for joining us, Mark.
Not at all. Thank you, Richard, for having me.